welcome back to the Stormwater Creek podcast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So we're down here at Tailwaters for a Sightlines and Scott Rod's demonstration event at Tailwaters, which is our home away from home for the Stormwater Creek podcast. I've lost count how many podcasts here, but
It's a great store. I mean,
awesome.
The first time I walked in here, I'm like, wow, this is really impressive.
Yeah, even if you're not a fly fisherman, my wife comes here every time. I'm telling her, hey, we're coming to Sean's store, Tailwaters, for for a happy hour for BHA or for an event like this that they put on. She's always like, man, I'm going to go to that one. So this is a place for all people involved. It's just a super neat store, and I don't even care if you're not a fisherman. You can come in here and hang out and have a good time.
There's nothing to buy. There's nothing here. I mean, it's not like you can, they only have Yeti and Sims and Temple Fork Outfitters and Scott and Sage and Scientific Angler and Fish Pond,
It's the who's
and
who.
Rio. I mean, it's like, dude, if it's in fly fishing, they got
it here.
They got it.
I can't spend enough time over there at that little fly wall they have just looking at flies. That to me is...
Yeah, I'm a fly addict, too.
I'm just like, man, that's awesome. Just like, could I use this? So right now I'm on a big shrimp kick because I've got a cousin who lives down in Corpus Christi.
Okay.
She's a professional woman fisherman.
Good deal.
She does, what is the name of her little group? She's got a Baffin and Babe. She does a big tournament with that, and she's on an all women's fishing team, and they kick ass. And she'll tear up redfish and specks, and so I told her about getting into fly fishing, and she was like, man, I want to so do that. She just uses traditional tackle, and so that's her new sickness. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to tie you up some shrimp because I've got that fly fishing thing.
Right.
So I ordered me some eyes, and I'm looking forward to giving the shrimp, trying to tie me up some shrimps.
Yeah, a lot of people, that's one of the most common questions I get asked is, I thought you can only fly fish for trout, right?
It's amazing.
They have no idea.
Look at you like you're crazy when you tell them fly fishing in Texas.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Before we get too much further down a rabbit hole, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm a native Virginian.
Beau Beasley.
Right. Yeah, my name is Beau Beasley. I'm an outdoor writer. I write for multiple publications. I've written for Eastern Fly Fishing and American Angler and Fly Tire and a host of other. I do a lot of stuff, a lot of in-depth conservation stuff for Fly Fish America, and I hope to have some work published in Tail and Strung coming up. New magazine coming up. I hope I didn't let the cat out of the bag. Great publication, headquartered, I believe, down in Florida. So I'm pretty excited about that. But my first job, or my real job, I spent 30 years with Fairfax County Fire and Rescue Department. So I'm a retired captain. My last assignment was a senior paramedic, and I was also the captain on Engine 27 in West Springfield. Wow. So I did that for 30 years.
Wow, that's fun. That's a unique, a unique transition from. I don't do a lot of firefighters transition into the writing world, or.
Well, I got to be really honest. That was kind of a fluke. I got into fly fishing because I was a young paramedic sergeant, and I ran a rescue call with an elderly gentleman named Bob Guess. And I had no idea who I was with, but at the time, Bob Guess was one of the best-known popping bug manufacturers in the country, which is a type of bass fly. I had no idea who he was, but I'm in the back of the ambulance with him, and he's gotten some irregular heartbeats, and I'm taking him to the hospital, so I'm just trying to chit-chat. And we were at Burke Lake in Fairfax County, Virginia. And I said, were you fishing? He said, no, I was just out walking around and got stung by a bee. But I do fish. I fly fish. I said, oh, man, I've always wanted to learn how to fly fish, right? And he looks at me and he squints his eyes down and he goes, son, I got a question for you. I said, okay. He said, do you golf? I said, no, sir, I don't golf. He said, good, son, because you can't afford to golf and fly fish.
That's a good start.
So, yeah, he said, you can't afford to golf and fly fish. So he said, I tell you what, son. He said, I'm going to give you my phone number. Why don't you call me in a couple of weeks, and I'll take you out fly fishing. And I thought, well, what the heck? I said, okay. I wrote down my phone number, and he gave me his phone number, and sure enough, 2 weeks later, he calls me up, and he says, you want to go fly fishing? And I go, well, sure. We go right back to the place where I picked him up in Burke Lake, the exact same location that 2 weeks ago I'd picked him up on a 911 call. We get in this little John boat, and I go out and cast one of his popping bugs, and I catch a bluegill on a fly rod, and I'm like, oh, I got to get me some of this, right? And I was done, right? I mean, I went home and just like retired my conventional gear then. I was like, I'll
hang on to these for some people who may come fishing with me.
Right. No, and so like many, God only knows how many people got into fly fishing through bluegill, but I started doing that, and then I became a very close personal friend of Bob Guest. Met his son. Eventually went to work for him, believe it or not. As a manufacturer's rep, selling his popping bugs to stores all over the country, which is how I got into the fly fishing industry. And then one day, I had an editor of a magazine, Virginia Sportsman, say, hey, why don't you write up something about these popping bugs? I said, I don't know anything about Ray. He goes, well, no, just write about how they're made and how you fish them. And I go, okay, well, I can do that. So I send in the article. About a month later, the article comes out, and I see what every outdoor writer loves. I saw my byline.
Yeah.
Right? I saw by Beau Beasley, and I went,
oh, wow,
dude,
that's
I'm
cool.
legit. Right? Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I'm legit. So after that, I just started writing, and I had no idea what I was doing, but I had an editor who came to me, a different editor than the first editor, and I'd written a couple of stuff, and he said, hey, I've read your stuff in this publication. I want you to write for me. And I go, well, great, okay. I said, but, I'm really not, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have any formal training. He said, all right, so here's what you do. You pretend like you're in your car, and I'm sitting right beside you in the car. Yeah. And you just tell me what we're doing.
Paper.
Right. And I go, oh, well, dude, I can do that.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that now for about 20 years. Now, I'm very fortunate. I've had stuff in Fly Fisherman. I've had stuff in about every major national magazine there is, and I'm very fortunate. I mean, I do a lot of conservation stuff. I do stuff for Mid-Current, which is, I call it the Associated Press of the fly fishing world, right? Marshall McCutcheon, the editor there, is a great guy. But I've got all I can say grace over, but the biggest thing I did was I married an editor.
Yeah.
Right? So my wife, my secret to my success is my wife, right? My wife, Layla.
I feel like that's a secret to a lot of success.
Absolutely. So when I'm at some show and I'm signing books or whatever, because I did a guidebook on fly fishing Virginia, and then I did fly fishing the Mid-Atlantic, and I'm working on a different book now. If I'm at some show in the Mid-Atlantic somewhere signing books, and so, oh, Jew, man, I love your stuff. I'm like, dude, if you saw it in the original crayon before my wife edited it, trust me, you wouldn't be impressed.
You'd be like, whoa.
Right. So trust me,
how have you kept yourself alive these many years?
I don't believe my own press clippings. I'm a blessed man, and the smartest thing I ever did was marry the wife that I married, who is the secret.
The secret sauce.
Secret, and oddly enough, I met her through the fire department too.
Did you? Were you responding to a 911 call?
I did. I responded to a 911 call, and it was her father.
Oh wow!
And I took him to the hospital, and we started talking, and we struck up a conversation, and I ended up calling him later on. I had an older paramedic who trained me that said, you can ask your patients, hey, you've got this issue, and sometimes, like, I'll give you an example. Like, let's say the person's got abdominal pain. Mm-hmm. There could be 1,000 things that cause that, right? But as a paramedic, we know a little bit about everything, but not much about anything. If it's not going to kill you in less than 5 minutes, I don't know anything about it, right? You talk to me about sclerotic tissue, I got nothing. Yeah. If it's an ACLS protocol, I'm all over it, right? So he said, you can call your patients a couple of weeks later and say, hey, Abe, I'm your paramedic. I picked you up for chest pain or whatever. How did that turn out? Yeah. And he said, they're going to tell you everything.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, and it's not that I'm morbid. It's that I want to learn.
Well,
Right. So I called him back, and I ended up talking to her. I had no idea the man I was with
Yeah.
would have been my father-in-law. He died before we got married.
Yeah.
So I called and I checked up on him a couple of times, and then the last time I called, my wife now, Layla, told me her dad died, and I'd lost my father a couple of years earlier. And I said, listen, here's what you can expect. People that you really like, you really care about, you're not going to hear from them.
Yeah.
They don't want to deal with the pain, so they just don't call you. I said, now, oddly enough, other people like me who you don't know are going to say, hey, let me tell you what to expect.
Yeah.
And, one thing led to another, and then one night she called me and she said, hey, my mom wants you to come over for dinner. I said, I'm not coming over for dinner. I said, that's like way too weird. Right? I'm not coming over to your house for dinner. And she's like, no, my mom said that you really made an impression on my dad. We'd like you to come over for dinner. I said, I cannot, as a Fairfax County firefighter, come over to your house for dinner. I'm sorry, I can't do that. And then she said to me, well, why can't you come over as a person?
Okay.
And I'm like,
well,
wow.
Touche.
Okay. Went over, had dinner, and I left, and her sister was there, and this is, God is my witness, this is the truth. I walk out of the house after dinner, and my now sister-in-law looked at my wife and said, you're going to marry that guy.
Oh, wow.
In less than a year, we were married.
Wow.
So anyhow,
they're very intuitive.
Yeah,
the female species.
So I had the good sense to marry up. So the secret to my success has
been the wife.
Has been the wife and marrying up. So
well, that's a pretty cool story. Just to kind of it's weird how the stars align sometimes, right?
It is. And divine intervention. No
exactly.
Doubt.
Things come together for a reason, typically.
Absolutely.
So really kind of got into fly fishing from that standpoint, but where were you kind of from a fly fishing, like where did you really kind of take that next step into really exploring multiple species of fish? Because it sounded like a lot of bluegill at first, but
so I knew nothing about. When I tell you I knew nothing about fly fishing, I mean nothing.
Nothing.
So I learned everything from the ground up, and Bob took me out to several places, and I fished for popping bugs or with popping bugs for like 2 years.
Yeah.
For species that don't eat popping bugs, but I didn't know that, right?
Yeah.
So everything I learned the hard way, everything.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate enough to meet a couple of guys that took me under their wing and said, hey, I want to take you fishing here. I want to take you fishing there. Okay, look, you want to use this kind of fly. You want to not go so far back with your back cast. And really in fly fishing, you need somebody to kind of disciple you.
No doubt.
And take you under your wing and say, all right, consider casting this way, consider casting that way, slow your retrieve down. Okay, speed your retrieve up. Because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I had 2 or 3 guys who came alongside me and took me under their wing. And it made all the difference in the world. And that's true for any sport, whether it's if you're a bow hunter, if you're a muzzle loader, if you're into trapping. It doesn't matter what it is. There's somebody who knows more than you.
Yeah.
And if you can come alongside those guys and they kind of take you under their wing,
absolutely,
then it makes all the difference in the world.
I think that's one of the reasons I'm really drawn to an organization like Backcountry Hunters and Anglers and a place like Tailwaters here, because they regularly do things where they bring people together. And so with just a little bit of some fortitude, I think a new person could come to an event like this, or like we had last night at Four Corners, where they can. I talked to 2 dudes brand new to hunting, and we had a conversation about getting into bows and getting into that thing. And so I think one of the biggest things for me is bringing people into the sport who just have an interest. And I think a lot of times people are like, well, I don't want to look stupid, or I don't know anything about it. I don't even know where to start. Right. But you know where it starts? It starts by just showing up to something and hanging out and talking and having a conversation.
And let's be honest, it's important to have a resource like we're sitting in Tailwaters. And if you came here tonight, you'd meet Steven Seaton, and you would learn everything there is to know about Scott rods. You'd know about the radian. You'd know about the meridian. You would know, okay, well, I like fishing for saltwater species. Okay, then this is the rod for you. Well, mostly I fly fish in ponds. Okay, well, then this is the rod for you. And he is going to sit there and teach you take you out. Yeah. Sean Polk, who's the general manager here, is going to give you a reel. You're going to go outside. You're going to cast the line.
Yeah.
And you're going to learn about what rod is right for you. Because Tailwaters does not want to just sell you a rod.
Yeah.
They want to sell you a rod that you're going to connect with and have fun, because then you're going to enjoy the sport.
Absolutely.
Right? You're going to come back to Tailwaters and you're going to get some waders from Sims, or you're going to get a fly line from Rio, or you're going to buy a Sage rod. Maybe you're going to get maybe if you're brand new, you want a Temple Fork Outfitters kit, and you're going to go get a Temple Outfitters rod that meets your need.
That's going to do what you want it to do.
You don't know what you don't know, and I got interviewed by a podcaster out of Michigan the other day, and he said, "What's the key to being a good fly angler?" I said, "I can tell you in one word." He said, "Really?" I said, "Absolutely, one word." He said, "What's that?" I said, "Humility."
Yeah.
Humility.
Nothing's more humility
than
able
to say,
getting caught up in a tree as you're going back.
Right. Well, you have to be able to say, "I don't know." Mm-hmm. Or you have to be able to say, "Can you help me?" And I got to be honest with you, men don't like doing that. No. We are the alpha male, and I'm large and in charge, and
I'll figure it out on my own.
Right. Which is why most women can outcast the average guy. Like, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
Fly fishing's got nothing to do with strength, right? Yeah. Fly fishing is all technique, having the right rod and the right gear, and doing it the right way. And most women can cast circles around men in half the time because they're not trying to be strong. They're not trying to impress anybody. Yeah. And, fly fishing, it's an elegant sport. It's, I tell people all the time, the most common question I get asked is, "Well, Beau, how is fly fishing different than conventional fishing or spin fishing?" And I tell everybody the same thing. Fly fishing is to conventional fishing what archery is to hunting.
Absolutely.
It is not any better. Anybody that tells you it's better is bullcrap, and you need to just, get away from that person, right? Because, and it's probably true in every sport, but in fly fishing, there are only two kinds of people. There are only two kinds of people. I learned this from Lefty Crape, rest his soul. There's the people that show their knowledge, and then there's the people that share their knowledge.
Absolutely.
Right? And you want to be around the guy that shares their knowledge and avoid the guy that shows, or gal, that shows their knowledge like the plague.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're humble and you say, "Man, I need some help with casting." Okay, well, show me what you're doing. Okay, well, you're not going far enough back with your back cast. Or, you're not waiting for the line to play out behind you before you start going forward. Or, the reason you're not picking up enough line is because you're not picking all the line up before you make your back cast. As a result, you're moving your rod 8 feet before the fly line ever moves. That's why it's not working. So just being humble and asking people, go into your local fly shop and say, "Hey," and here's another, the most common problem that I see as someone who's in the fly fishing community. A guy will buy a $500 pair of waders, and he'll buy a $700 fly rod, and he'll buy a $60 fly line, and he'll buy hundreds of dollars worth of flies, and he will not spend 10 cents getting a casting lesson.
Yeah.
Won't do it.
I know how to do it. YouTube will teach me.
Y'all YouTube it. And I got news for you. If you spent just an hour a week practicing on your fly casting, or you hire somebody, you come here and you say to Sean Polk at Tailwaters, "Look, I want to hire you for a private lesson for an hour. And I want to hire you for 1 hour a week for the next 4 weeks." I'm telling you now, you spend a month casting with Sean Polk for an hour every hour, for 1 hour, let's say every Tuesday evening. Dude, at the end of the month, you're going to be able to walk the dog.
Yeah.
Because if you can cast, generally speaking, not always, this is a broad generalization. If you can cast 40 feet accurately in fly fishing, 40 feet, probably 30 feet, you can catch 80, 90% of the fish you want to catch.
Yeah. I went out with Sean, we went out fishing the other day and just fly fishing, and he was like, "Hey, just do this. Just one thing." And it was like, boom.
It makes all the difference in the world.
It was just one little thing, and I was like, wow, that's like 10 feet farther. That's
right.
like,
oh, yeah.
It's just like,
well, and it's not just, and here's the other thing, Abe. It's not so much 10 feet farther. That's all good and well.
Yeah.
It's putting the fly where you want it to be.
Exactly.
So who cares if you can cast 90 feet, but you're not accurate,
yeah.
right? I'd rather be much accurate at 45 feet and be able to put it in the coffee can, right? Than be able to cast 40 more feet, but I'm not accurate.
God knows where it's going, yeah.
Right, correct.
I'm hitting water, but that's about it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, because that's like, so we've been doing some fishing in some, like, back in some, not sloughs, but these little areas that are flooded out because of all the rain we've gotten up in here down here in Dallas and in Texas. And so we've just been fishing these little lines that run transitions where water and grass beds meet, and you got to put
a great place for fish.
Yeah, especially with like a frog popper, right? So we're just popping frogs right through there along those grass beds, and if you're 10 feet to the left, well, you're not catching anything,
right? Because you're not in the zone.
Every single thing we caught was just moving right down that. So, like you said, we weren't catching fish 25 feet from us. They were 10, 15 feet. We were just sitting in the water. I mean, we were in waders in water.
Right.
Thigh deep water too. So it's not like we were sitting, ankle deep on the shore. We were out where they live and catching fish, and it was about placing that. So I mean, that just is a truth of all, most things, right? It doesn't matter if you can throw the baseball 200 miles an hour. You can't throw it over the plate. No one gives a damn, right? So.
Correct.
So, kind of, what does an average fly angler look like when you look at somebody like that?
It's interesting. So, if I ask you, hey, what's the average fly angler look like? You would probably tell me he's a 60-year-old white college professor that 100%. Wears a tweed pipe, wears a tweed jacket, smokes a pipe, and casts for brook trout.
Yeah.
Right. Now, we're here in the great state of Texas. I live in Virginia. I live in Warrenton, about an hour outside of D.C., and there, it's all about brook trout fishing and smallmouth bass or whatever. Here in the great state of Texas, it's primarily largemouth bass, unless you're trout fishing on the Guadalupe. So most people think the average guy is this 55-year-old white guy that's a college professor. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, I don't know what the average fly angler looks like. They come in all shapes, all sizes.
I mean, we have the women full spectrum right here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got young, we've got older, and people ask me and I had it last night at Four Corners. Oh, I've always wanted to learn how to fly fish. I must have had 2 or 3 people tell me last night at Four Corners Brewery in Dallas, which is one of my favorite breweries. Mm-hmm. I love their Heart of Texas, right?
Yeah.
They're like, hey, so, can you fly fish for something other than bass? Yeah. And probably my favorite question is people are like, well, what's the biggest fish you ever caught? Which is kind of a standard question.
Sure.
Right? And I say, 125-pound black-tip shark.
Ooh.
And they're like, what? Yeah, it was about 5 feet, and it weighed about 125 pounds. Black-tip shark off the coast of North Carolina, Atlantic Beach, off Cape Lookout at a Project Healing Waters fly fishing event, the Cape Lookout False Albacore Festival, and this was 2 years ago. Now, we didn't bring him in the boat, but the guide looks at that and he goes, oh, that's easily a 125-pound fish. Right, so you can fly fish for anything. I wouldn't want a shark in the boat.
No,
we didn't. No.
It's like
that was definitely an LDR, right? That's a long distance release for sure.
Yeah, that's
right, because I want to keep my hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, but we were out there fishing for false albacore, and those false albacore, they cruise at about 35 miles an hour.
Wow.
They don't ever stop.
Yeah.
And when you bring one of those in, when you release them, you don't let them off the side of the boat and do the kind of gentle. Yeah. You literally throw them in the water like a spear so their gills will open up and they take off running, right? But mixed in with the false albacore that are eating the bait fish are the black-tip sharks.
Are the big boys.
So those black-tip sharks are eating on the false albacore. Yeah. So I managed to land one of them. Now, let me say that, in my opinion, the bluegill that I caught that weighed less than a half a pound was much more important than a 125-pound black-tip shark.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because that's what got me into the sport. And if I can just be really totally transparent, and and not trying to sound dramatic, as a paramedic, you see a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah.
Like
bad.
Yeah. Like I have images in my head and voices in my head that I will never not see and never not hear, right? So for me, once I learned how to fly fish, it was a release, and it kind of helped me get out of what I had to do as a paramedic. And and I think a lot of people fly fish, because they enjoy it and they kind of get out of the sense of where they are, whether they're a stockbroker or whether they work at a bank or they drive a concrete truck or whatever, right? We all want to get out and disconnect. So
fishing is a universal way to do that.
Absolutely.
For sure. And it's a hell of a lot less frustrating to me than golf.
Yes. Yeah. But I love it, right?
Yeah.
And I believe in it, and it has done. I do not exaggerate when I tell you that fly fishing is therapy for me.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Right, made a huge difference in my life.
Well,
so.
I think it's the same.
So fly fishermen, they look like anybody.
Yeah.
It's just we kind of get a bad rap because people just don't know, or maybe they meet the wrong person.
Well, I think everybody gets the expectation that it's the river runs through it type thing, and that's something that happens in Montana or Wyoming,
exactly. That's
that
out
kind of
west,
thing, right. That's not for me. But
that's not true. It is for you.
Not.
You
Absolutely.
you can fish in the Trinity River. You can fish in the Brazos River. You can fish on the Devil's River.
You want to talk about trying to catch something that's a crazy fish to catch, that every single person who has ever been fishing has either caught one or seen them, is an alligator gar, which infest the waters here.
Right.
They tail walk like a tarpon. So you want the closest thing to going and catching a tarpon right here in Dallas in the Trinity River.
Right.
You got it. And you catch one of those things on a fly rod, it's
game on.
And that's the thing too, right? Catching a 125-pound black tip shark on a fly rod in it's crazy, right? That's awesome. But just that, every fish I've caught has not been 125 black
Right. And I want to be clear, that's an aberrant.
No,
but to me, if you told, there are guys listening to this podcast that go, dude, I live in Dallas. I didn't know there were alligator gar out there. You can catch alligator gar on a fly rod?
On a fly rod,
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, I think that's the thing to me, right, is that when you get over the fact that it's this picture that you have in your mind because you've watched it on TV or you've seen movies, or you just have this kind of stereotypical look at that, it opens up to the world. And I think that every single person who has ever picked up a bow and started shooting a bow and goes, man, this is awesome, I should shoot this thing in my backyard, and then you just go out and you shoot your bow, and the stress that melts off of you every time you put your release on and you start releasing arrows, the same thing
it's
occurs
like you're
to
shooting
me.
Your stress, right? You're releasing that stress.
It's
going out of you.
The same thing that happens when I pick up a fly rod and I start casting out, or if I tie flies. That's my I do the same. I come home, I sit at my desk and I tie flies, or I have a TV tray that I have set up for tying flies, and I just tie flies, and it just takes you away, right? I don't even think about work because I'm thinking about what am I doing here, right? And you kind of have to think about it, which is great, but it's not something that you have to think about that's so overwhelming that you're like, this is stressful, So I'm hook, line, and sinker into it, and I'm trying to, just like you, teach it, just illuminate people, especially in this state, that you don't have to be that 55-year-old professor with a corncob pipe,
Right. But, we'll take that guy too, because let me tell you, that guy or that gal, because we don't want to assume that there isn't something, but trust me, I know 2 or 3 women that can literally run circles around me because they're just that good. Mm-hmm. The first person that comes to my mind is Wanda Taylor out of Tennessee. She's just phenomenal caster, phenomenal instructor.
I came to the Project Healing Waters had their fly fishing festival video film tour that came through this year. And so I've always gone to the full draw film tour and hunting film tours here because I'm kind of by birth a hunter, if you will. And so I was like, man, there's a fly fishing film tour. Right. And I was floored by the amount of women who were there. Not women who were there because, my husband or my boyfriend dragged me.
No. No.
They were dragging a husband around with them,
Right.
And I was floored by that. And so it's just a great sport for anybody who wants to get out. And I mean, I think
and it's not
the outdoors
nearly
is universal.
Right. I agree. And it's not nearly as hard. People that want to get involved with fly fishing and they don't know what to do, I tell them, look, if you're in Texas, then Google Federation of Fly Fishers International, right? And find a club that's near you and say, hey, I want to go and I want to learn about fly fishing. Yeah. And they will be glad to teach you. Or, Google Trout Unlimited. If you're somewhere in the country and you want to learn about fly fishing, Google Trout Unlimited and go to the club and just say, hey, my name is Beau. I'm brand new. I don't know anything.
You will have so many people on you.
Dude, they'll be fighting over
on rice.
Right. Yeah. It'll be like a fat man chasing a donut, right? It's like free fried chicken on a Sunday afternoon, right? Everybody and his brother will, because they want to share what they know.
Most of them have been exactly in your same shoes.
Absolutely,
right?
all of them.
All of them. And so that's what I like about this. This is a super accepting audience of people, and that are there. So. Obviously tailwaters, because that's where we're at. Do you have any other places that you may recommend? Somebody who's like, hey, man, I want to do this, but I'm right here in Texas, right?
Okay, so there are all kinds of great places off the top of my head, and obviously you can Google tailwaters here in Dallas-Fort Worth area. Tailwaters is going to be a great resource. If you're in Austin,
okay.
You want to talk to a Sportsman's Finest, go in there and talk to Greg Waylander at Sportsman's Finest. Or maybe you want to talk to Chris at Living Waters. Or, maybe I would recommend you go talk to Marcos. Let's say you're in Houston. Then go to Gordy and Sons.
Yeah.
There are other fly shops. Just Google fly shops near me, right? And I'm sure I left somebody out. I'm sure there's some fly shop in Texas that'll give me a hard time because I didn't mention them. But those are the ones that I know off the top of that come to the Texas Fly Fishing and Brew Festival. So, but
which is someplace that last year when I went to that, and I stumbled upon the Fly Fishing Festival, by virtue of that I'm involved with Backcountry Hunters and Anglers.
Right.
You are fortunate enough to let us have a booth there, to talk to those people about public lands, and I just was like head on a swivel. I was like, oh my God, dude, there is so much cool stuff here.
Oh yeah.
Fly tying, rod building. You talk about organizations that are right here. You've got Cocoa Outdoors, who we met through you guys, that is a nonprofit for veterans to help them get out. There's
Chris Gorman's group.
Yeah, there's a ton of these people, and you and I have talked about several of these kinds of organizations that A, they're always looking for help, and B, they're always looking for people to come out and do this stuff.
There's a lot of great organizations.
Absolutely.
In fly fishing. One of my favorites is Project Healing Waters.
Absolutely.
Right now, I was never in the military. I spent 30 years in the fire department as a career firefighter, but I know lots of soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines and Coast Guard members who have been injured or have gotten ill in the service of their country, and fly fishing is a release for them.
Absolutely.
Right? So I'm a huge Project Healing Waters fan. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're a veteran and you want to get connected, the coolest thing about Project Healing Waters is it is an organization run by veterans, for veterans. Yep. They don't care where you serve. They don't care how long ago it was. They don't care what branch you were, right? They just want to introduce you to fly fishing. And these guys come, and gals, a lot of women, come and they learn about fly fishing, and they start fly tying. And I had a veteran who told me something one time I never forgot. He said, Beau, and this was a Vietnam veteran. And he said, Beau, I came back from Vietnam and I was really angry. And I don't even know what I was angry about, but I was angry. And one day, a friend of mine showed up with, and I'll even tell you who this, I'm going to tell you who this was. This is Bob Popovics, one of the most famous fly tyers in the Northwest. He's the one that told me this story. He's hardcore Marine. Big as you would not want to make Bob Popovics angry, right? This is a big dude, right? And he said, a guy came to my house and said, we're going to tie flies. And I didn't know anything about it.
You're like, really?
Right. He said, I don't know anything about this. And the guy gave me the stuff, and he said, we started tying flies. And the more I tied, the less angry I became. Yeah. And I've had veterans tell me sometimes they get up in the middle of the night and they're really hurting. They are in physical pain. They've taken all the pain medication that they can, and they just sit down and start tying flies. So Project Healing Waters is an organization that I fully support. They're at the Fly Fishing Festival. Another good organization is Casting for Recovery.
Yep.
Which is an organization that helps women, particularly that have cancer. Trout Unlimited comes to the event. The Guadalupe River chapter of Trout Unlimited, largest Trout Unlimited chapter in the country, is there. Backcountry Hunters and Anglers comes to the Fly Fishing Festival. So it's a lot of fun, and it's not just nonprofits, right? We've got all kinds of companies that are there. In the past, we've had great brands like Sage and Temple Fork Outfitters. And Hardy.
You're a big kayak fan too, because you guys have the whole kayak section.
We do.
That thing is awesome.
We do. So most people are surprised when they come to the Fly Fishing and Brew Festival. There is a kayak demo pod.
Yep.
And we're happy to be supported by a
lot of indoor water.
A lot of indoor water, and our friends at Mariner Sales are there. There's a kayak pond there. You can actually get a kayak, get into the kayak pond, and paddle it around and see if it's what you want, and then you can go right over and buy your kayak right there from Mariner Sales at the event. So it's we kind of segued in the Texas Fly Fishing and Brew Festival. I many years ago, more than 20 years ago, a friend of mine called me up and said, we need to have a fly fishing event in Virginia. And the next thing I knew, I was trying to promote fly fishing.
Yeah.
And now I'm fortunate enough to be the director of the Virginia Fly Fishing and Wine Festival. And this year in January, we will be celebrating our 19th year.
Wow.
About 5 years ago, people started coming to me and said, man, you got to do it. We've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
You got to come somewhere else. And I go, well, where would you recommend? As God is my witness, 3 different people that did not talk to the other 3 said Texas. You need to come to Texas. So in no small part, because I did get a great deal of support from Temple Fork Outfitters. They're a great company headquartered out of Dallas. They said, we really think Texas is ready for something like this. And I spent about 2 years looking for a location, and now this year will be our 3rd year, and it'll be in Plano. March 23rd and 24th will be the Texas Fly Fishing and Brew Festival.
And we're definitely you're going to be back on as we get closer, and we're going to outline all the things that are going to be going on there.
Okay.
Because it's not just a place where you go and be like, oh, cool, I can go buy some stuff. Right? It's also a place where you can go and learn a bunch of stuff.
Right? Correct.
I think that's the big
We're
thing for me.
We're very heavy into instruction.
Exactly.
Very heavy in the hands-on
exploring
instruction.
There's just all these little, you got the main floor where all the cool stuff's going on, right? All the bright and shiny moving lights. But then off on all these little hallways, you see these guys who are back there, and they're putting pen to paper on, here's how you do this, here's how you do that, here's, tying flies, here's how to fish, how to cast, how to do all these things.
Right. Here's how to catch. Like this coming year, I'm going to have Blaine Chocolate come here and talk about catching muskie. I'm going to have Mike Taylor here talking about emergency medicine and what to do if you're a guide or you're just an average angler and your buddy gets hurt on the river. What do you do? So I got a nationally registered paramedic teaching a class on what to do. I'm going to have Matt Sapinski here talking about catching brown trout and salmon. He's going to give a class on cooking seafood, right? Yeah. So it's out of the ordinary, but the bottom line is it's fun, and we want people to get more involved in fly fishing.
I can't agree with you anymore. So
and also it doesn't hurt that we have beer, right? So Tups Brewery will be there. Four Corners will be there. Oak Highlands will be there. Sweetwater's going to be there. Yeah. Real Ale is going to be there. So you pay your admission fee, and we give you some beer tasting tickets, and you walk around and talk to everybody and test a fly rod, and then test a beer. It's tough. It's brutal.
It is brutal.
It's brutal. It's a tough job, Abe, but somebody's got to do it.
Hey, man, I tell you,
it's tough.
I've already been like, man, I know it's going to be tough, but I'm going to volunteer for the booth at Texas Fly Fishing Festival again. So. I like I said, I drew so much inspiration from being there and being around just that many people, and that's to me one of the coolest things that kind of an event provides is being around a bunch of people, and that's where you find somebody who's like, oh no shit, you live in the next city over from me. You're in, you know, a little suburb here.
Well, let's go fishing at this place. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I got a place you can go to. Come on. You know, you know what? I got a rod. You can use mine, and then we'll get you one. You know, we'll go over and figure out where you can get one. So I think that if you're interested in getting it, it is a put down on the calendar, must go to event for anyone who's a fisherman at all. You know, so. Well, one of the other big things you write about on a pretty heavily basis is access, and so being, you know, kind of drawn off the BHA thing. So just from an access standpoint, I mean, we just had a midterm election, and you know, just kind of as far as maybe not a policy, but as far as just kind of some of the biggest issues, maybe one or two top issues that are facing. You know, our country as a whole, when it comes to public access and public use, where do you think about that, and you know, what do you think those top two things are?
Well, oddly, sometimes things come to you that you're not looking for, right? And I have become kind of a de facto. I do not like using the word expert, because expert connotes that I've got official training and I'm an authority on something, and I'm not. Right, but I write a lot about excess and use, and I have questions all the time from all over the country. People write me and say, "Hey, I read your article about river bottom ownership and American angler, and can you tell me about this? Can you tell me about that?" And here's the biggest mistake. The number one biggest mistake for anglers is they assume that whatever state they're in, when they leave and go to another place, the rules are the same.
That's how you get yourself into some trouble.
Well, right, but you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
And here's where we're going to stray into the politically incorrect area. I don't know about you, but when I was in the 7th and the 8th grade in history class, I was much more interested in the redhead that was sitting 2 rows away than paying to my history teacher. I ended up marrying a redhead, which worked out well for me, right? Okay, but I didn't pay attention to history. Riparian meaning river. Riparian law is all history.
Yeah.
And it's all what was going on when this state came into the Union.
Okay.
That's why there's so much more public access in the East than in the West.
Okay.
Right? Because in the East, people had been living there for a long time, right? In the West, large swaths of the state just got ceded to the state.
Yeah.
And they got millions of acres.
Yeah.
As opposed to some of the other smaller states.
They didn't make too many Rhode Islands.
No, they didn't. That's correct. So I kind of by default about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I got a really curious phone call. I had a guy call me up on the phone and said, "Hi," and they told me his name, and he said, "I know you're an outdoor writer, and I know you do investigative stuff, and I'm hoping you can help me. I am being sued for fishing in public property. Can you help me?" And I had to go back and, I'm kind of telling on myself. Like I played the recording back like, you're being sued for fishing on public property? So in this particular case that I worked on in Virginia, which was kind of my segue into this, was a Jackson River lawsuit. An angler followed the law, fished on property that the game department said he could go to, but the landowner came out and said, "I own the bottom of the river, and you have to leave." And the angler said, "Well, I'm not leaving."
Yeah.
Because the state said this is public property.
Yeah.
And he ended up calling the deputy sheriff, and they would not press criminal charges, but the landowner sued him civilly. He went back to the state of Virginia and said, "Hey, I'm being sued civilly." And the state of Virginia said, "Hey,
you're on your
that's
own, bro.
A civil issue. We only deal with criminal. We're out."
Yeah. So
he got hung out to dry. And the bottom line was it went through the court, and it took a couple of years.
So what? How did they sue him civilly? Just what was
trespassing? Okay,
trespassing?
so here's what people need to understand. First of all, every law is different.
Yeah.
Right. Every state is different. Texas law is not like in Oklahoma, is not like in Missouri, is not like in Delaware. Now, there may be some common threads.
Yeah.
Now, a common thread would be if a river is deemed navigable by the Army Corps of Engineers under the Rivers and Harbors Act. That is a federal rating, and that goes across all 50 states.
Okay.
But states often have other laws that they use to determine what's public and what's not.
Okay.
If it's a navigable river by the federal standards underneath the Rivers and Harbors Act, 99.9% of the places I know you can go fish.
So
the problem comes with the definition of navigability.
Yeah. So where would somebody go to know? So they're like, hey, man, I got this little stream that's down the street from my house, and I see big bass in there. I see big fish in there.
Okay. All right.
I can navigate it. Is that navigable?
That's a fabulous question. And here's what I get all the time. Well, Beau, you don't understand. I can put my kayak in it with no problem, so it's navigable. That is not the definition of navigable. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of axioms to go by. Axiom number 1, do not go by the internet.
Yeah.
Right? There are all kinds of
internet could be wrong?
There are all kinds of keyboard experts, right?
Exactly.
And they pontificate about what they don't know about. So that's number 1. Don't listen to somebody who is just shooting off their mouth.
Yeah.
If you want to look for an authority, if you want to look for a federal rating, you can go to the Army Corps. Just Google Army Corps of Engineers in your area and Google Army Corps of Engineers navigable rivers. And there will be a listing. And according to the federal government, there are 3 listings: navigable, non-navigable, assumed navigable. Assumed navigable means that the feds think would be considered a navigable river, but it's never gone to court.
Okay.
And we have never, quote unquote, deemed it navigable. But it looks big enough for commercial use, so we're going to think it probably was.
Okay.
Now, but until it goes to court, there's no official ruling. So that's number 1. If you're looking for local water, not necessarily a federal rating, your local game department will probably be able to tell you.
Yeah.
Now, in Texas, you have excellent resources here.
Yeah.
And you can contact the Texas Parks and Wildlife and say, hey, I want to go to this area. Can you tell me what public water is available?
Man, I'll tell you, the game wardens, if you Google game warden, Texas game warden for a specific area, it will not only tell you their name, but it will give you their phone number. And not only that, they'll pick the phone up.
Oh, sure they will.
That's the thing that I've always been – I always figured I'd have to leave a message, and I've left messages, and they typically call me back within 25, 30 minutes, maybe an hour. But,
and
it's
most
very
people don't think about this, but those law enforcement officers, they're hunters and fishermen too.
Absolutely.
Right? Like yes, their job is to be a conservation police officer. I don't know what you call them in Texas. Is what we call them in Virginia.
Game warden.
But they're hunters and fishermen
too,
right? They're people too. And they want you to go hunting. They want you to go fishing. No. But they want you to do it legally.
Yep.
So, all right, so let's talk about Texas. Texas has I've never seen the kind of standard that Texas has in other states, but that's okay. In Texas, state law, as I understand it, says that if a river is 30 feet wide from the mouth to the source, it's a navigable river, irrespective of how deep it is, which is different than the federal standard, right? The federal standard generally means some type of commerce. So let's go back. I was joking that, in 7th grade you didn't pay any, you were looking at the redhead rather than your history teacher. In the colonial days, the rivers were the interstates.
Yeah.
That was the interstate. So if you were a farmer and you were moving tobacco's a big crop in Virginia, or you're moving cattle downriver, or you're moving horses, or you're moving whatever it is, you're moving corn or beans or whatever. What the federal government didn't want was for me, Joe Farmer, to stretch a cable across the river and charge a private toll.
Yeah.
So the federal government said these rivers are deemed navigable for commerce, and we, the federal government, we don't own the bottom of the river, but we do own the surface.
Yeah.
So you cannot stretch up a cable and prevent commerce. So that's how that standard got set. Interestingly enough, in many states, they have what I call as an assumption law. And if the federal government owns the surface of the river, the state owns the bottom. Now, that's not always the case, but that's generally the case. Now, here's what's cool when I started doing this research on Virginia and river bottom ownership, probably one of the things that I am the proudest of is after writing about it for almost 2 years, finally the landowner called me on the phone. And he said, and he told me who his name was. And he said, do you want an interview? And I said, not just yes.
Yeah.
Right? Because he'd not granted an interview to anybody, because every other outdoor writer made him out to be Genghis Khan, right? But my opinion was, and I take some heat for this as an outdoor writer, and I say this and people kind of raise their eyebrows, but I am a very old school outdoor writer. And I'm going to say something that's really controversial. Or it shouldn't be, but it is. It's not my job to advocate for the fish.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not my job to advocate for the wildlife. As an outdoor writer and a journalist, my job is to advocate for the truth.
Yeah.
Now, if the truth makes backcountry hunters and anglers angry, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
If you're a private landowner and the truth makes you angry, I'm sorry about that. But that's the truth.
Yeah.
Now, once you know the truth,
yeah,
then you can decide how you're going to respond.
Exactly.
Then you can decide how to react.
Exactly.
And the problem that I see is someone who writes about access and use a lot is that people are very quick to demonize the other side.
Yeah.
Oh, this guy's and I bet I have heard this argument 100 times. Oh, he's just a greedy, rich, stinking landowner. And I ask him, okay, well, let me ask you something. This greedy, rich landowner that owns this particular river bottom, would he own it less or more if he were a plumber?
Yeah. And
right?
if you got hurt on it and you needed to sue somebody,
right?
you know.
Right. So the question is, does he own it or not?
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the question.
What he is no
right. Correct.
Doesn't matter.
Now, let's be honest. If you got a whole lot of money, then obviously you can advocate in the court. You can do things and you have a lot more influence, and everybody gets that, right? But my point is, whether they're rich or not doesn't make any difference. What matters is, what does the law say? Yeah. So I have people contact me all the time. And I have to be honest, most of the time I have to put the anglers in their place and I go, what you're doing is illegal.
Yeah.
You're trespassing. And they go, well, yeah, but that's public water. Yes, but you're crossing private property.
Yeah.
You cannot cross private. I don't know any state in the union where you can cross private property to get to public water.
No.
Can't do it, right?
You can't even corner hop.
Right.
In a lot of places.
And let me tell you, and I don't want to sound like I'm kissing up, I really admire backcountry hunters and anglers' job. They put out a study not long ago on public water on all 50 states. That is a huge undertaking. Yeah. And I have listened, to other podcasts, to BHA representatives. Let me tell you about those BHA representatives. A, they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
B, they're polite. And C, they understand you need to respect private landowners' rights.
Yeah.
That's, to me, that's one of the biggest challenges we have. People go, well, I want to go fishing. It's my day off. I'm going to go fish over there. But, dude, you don't own it. Well, I don't care. Yeah. And I ask these guys, well, how would you feel if somebody decided to come camp in your backyard?
Yeah.
Right? Now, the problem comes. Now, here's where we meet the rub, right? So let's say, and I have found almost no fly anglers or conventional anglers or hunters for that matter that intentionally want to trespass.
Yeah, no.
That is extremely rare, and those people should be shunned and just excommunicated.
We don't need
them. We don't need those guys, right? Because they're the same guys that would poach.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? The problem comes when somebody has a piece of property and they think that it's private and they own it, and it's a public resource.
Yeah.
That's where the problem comes. And I'm very fortunate that because I don't take a side, because I refuse to take a side, I get all kinds of access. Yeah, I can't tell you how cool it is as an outdoor writer to get a return phone call from a district attorney somewhere who calls me to answer a question about a particular legal issue. And the dude is literally trying a murder case.
Yeah.
He's trying a murder case over a period of 2 weeks, and he calls me on the phone and goes, dude, I'm a fisherman too. And they want to know, right?
Exactly.
So here's number one. Don't assume that where you're from is when you go to Arkansas.
Yeah.
So we're in Texas. So don't assume that the laws in Texas apply in Oklahoma or Arizona or New Mexico or Colorado, because they don't. So let's go back to Texas. So if the river is 30 feet wide or longer, or wide, at least 30 feet wide from the mouth to the source, give or take. Sometimes it might be 27 feet, sometimes it might be 34, right?
Yeah.
It's a navigable river, and even though the river bottom is privately owned, you have the right to be there
Just
under
don't touch
Texas
the
state law. No, you can.
Oh, okay.
You can touch the bottom under state law. You can anchor up under state law.
Okay.
Even though it's private. Now, the caveat is, and listen very carefully. If you're listening to this podcast, listen to this. Yeah. It has to be a navigable river, according to the Parks and Recreation Department of Texas.
Okay.
Right? So the Texas Parks and Wildlife, it's got to be 30 feet navigable.
Okay.
It's got to be 30 feet to be deemed navigable. If it's less than 30 feet, it can be privately owned, and they can deny you access.
So let me ask you this. So a navigable waterway, in everyone's mind, I can't imagine somebody's listening to this podcast not thinking about a river with water in it.
Right.
So what if a piece of a stretch of river is deemed navigable, meets all the criteria, has no water in it? It's dry riverbed, or has just
okay.
So you're
then,
maybe using it to walk from hole to hole.
Okay, so in that particular case, again, I would have to have the specific state.
Sure.
Right
here in Texas. Let's say just here in Texas.
So if it's deemed navigable, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
My understanding is,
yeah,
if it's 30 feet wide, but there's only 26 feet of water in it because the water level goes down.
Yeah.
If it's deemed navigable, it's navigable.
Because 30
irrespective.
feet would be the high level watermark, right?
That's my understanding.
That's the way I've always understood.
That's my understanding.
When you're underneath the
it doesn't
high level,
mean right.
So
let me be clear. If the river's 30 feet wide and then during the dry season it's only 27 feet wide, it does not cease to be navigable.
Yeah. It's navigable. It's navigable.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, here's where it gets tricky. So 30 feet or more is navigable once it's been rated by the Parks and Wildlife Department. If it's less than 30 feet, it's non-navigable and it can be privately owned.
Okay.
And you can be denied access. Here's where it gets interesting. If, however, the river is in a tract of land that fell underneath a Spanish land grant or a Mexican land grant, their laws at the time said it didn't matter that it was less than 30 feet wide, and they deemed them navigable. When they came into the state of Texas recognized that. And therefore you can go fish there, even though they're not a navigable river. But you have to do the homework to figure out, right? Don't just assume.
Yeah.
So just don't assume. But I'm telling you right now.
Wikipedia is not going to give you the right answer.
No, Wikipedia. No. But I'm telling you right now, there are rivers that are less than 30 feet wide that are non-navigable that could be used by the public. Because when those particular land grants where those rivers flowed were ushered into the great state of Texas. I don't know if you know this or not, but Texas used to be its own country.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
No doubt.
So they took those land grants from from Mexico and Spain, Texas law said, you know what? We're going to take the same view that they did, that those are public waterways.
Okay.
So the key here is to do your homework, right?
Yep.
And don't assume. Now here comes... This inevitably, I get asked this question, so let's just go to it. Beau, what do I do when I get approached by a landowner?
Okay.
And he tells me I'm trespassing. Rule number one, be polite.
Yeah.
Don't be rule number one for dealing with the landowner, don't be a jackass.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Even if the other guy is being highly agitated,
Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath, right?
Yeah.
So this is, look, as a fireman, when I got a call at 2 o'clock in the morning for a shooting, right? I go out, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you go to a bar, a 38-year-old male has been shot in the chest with a .357.
Yeah.
I didn't have time to look up my manual what to do.
Yeah,
right. You have to know what to do before you get there. So if you're going to go fish a stretch of water, you need to know what the prevailing laws are for access before you get there.
Yeah.
So let's you know what? Let's do a little role play here.
Okay.
You're a rancher.
All right.
And I'm an angler. And you think I'm trespassing. Let's just go.
What the hell are you doing here, Beau?
Hey, my name is Beau Beasley. I'm fly fishing in the stream here. I don't want to cause any problem.
This is my land.
Well, and you know what? I'm not even keeping any fish, but I'm just I'm out here fly fishing, having a good day.
Well, you're on my you're on my land. This is mine. I own this.
Well, you
crossed the fence to get in here.
Yeah, well, and you know what? I didn't cross the fence to get in. I don't know how other people got here. I came in by illegal access.
Okay.
State of Texas says that if a public roadway crosses a navigable river, that is a legal entry point.
All right.
So I came into this river at, we'll just make a street name, at Jones and Branch.
Okay.
That's where I came in. State of Texas says I can enter a navigable river. This is a navigable river. It's more than 30 feet wide.
Okay.
And you're right. You do own the river bottom. You're 100% right. But Texas law says I have the right to be here.
Okay. Well, I'm calling the sheriff.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And you know what? If you want to call the sheriff, I completely understand. Yeah. By the way, when you call the sheriff, could you ask him to call Game Warden Dave Quessenberry? Dave Quessenberry.
Yeah.
I just made that name up.
It's a good
Call
name.
the Game Warden, because you know what? I've already talked to the Game Warden.
I know Dave.
And Game Warden Quessenberry says this is a public fishery and I have every right to be here. Okay. So go ahead and call him. I'm waiting.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait here. I'm not getting out of the river. I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to cuss at you. I'm not,
Yeah.
And you know what? I understand, sir, I understand that you probably had a lot of people here that have left trash, that maybe they left your fences open. Mm-hmm. I'm not interested in doing any of that. I just want to have a nice day on the river fly fishing. But if you think I'm trespassing, by all means, call the police.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to wait. I'll wait right here with you. I don't want to cause a problem. 90% of the landowners, when you do that, especially when you say you've already talked to the game warden, they're like nonplussed.
Yeah.
Right? Now, let's go one step further.
All right.
Now because chances are, let me tell you the rule of game warden rule 101.
Yep.
They got like 3 counties to supervise.
Yep.
Wherever they're needed, they're at the opposite end of the county.
Of course, yeah.
Right? It's just the way it is, right?
The way it goes.
So chances are, 99 times out of 100, that game warden is not going to be able to come to where you're at. Now, he might call the other deputy on the phone.
And say, hey, he's good.
And say, hey, he's good, right? And I would have that game warden's phone number down. So the deputy sheriff shows up. I'm just picking out a name. Collin County deputy sheriff shows up. No disrespect for law enforcement. Being a fireman, if I could read and write, I'd have been a cop. Right?
Yeah.
But I couldn't read and write.
Sure.
Couldn't count to 6. But I could hold my breath and climb ladders. So I went to work for the fire department. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. When that deputy shows up, chances are he knows butkus about river law.
Yeah.
Right? You know why? Because he's dealing with rapists and drug dealers and meth labs and human trafficking and credit card fraud. He's got
his plate full.
Right. It's 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And you know what the deputy wants? That deputy wants what every single deputy in the entire United States wants. You know what he wants? He wants quiet.
Yeah.
Or she wants quiet. Yeah. So the deputy comes. So you be the deputy, and I'll be the angler. So now it's 45 minutes later. The farmer's standing over here, and you're Deputy Jones, and I'm the fisherman. Let's go.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think you're trespassing here. You're on this guy's land. I mean, you're clearly in the middle of this river. This is on his property. I know this man. So you need to get out of here.
Okay.
Right?
And you know what, Deputy Jones? I hear what you're saying. This is a public fishery.
Sure.
Would you be willing to call the game warden to check before you make me leave?
Yeah.
because here's his phone number. Could you call the game warden? Because he'll answer the phone. His cell phone number's public property. Would you be willing to call the game warden, or do I have to go? No, you got to go. So the answer is, okay, deputy, even though I think I'm right, I'm going to follow your lawful order. I'm going to quietly leave. I'm going to walk back up the river the same way I came.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to presuppose that I can just get out and walk across this guy's front yard.
Yep.
So I'm going to leave. But can I have your card? Because deputy, no disrespect, you're wrong.
Yeah.
But I understand you got other stuff to do.
Yeah.
I want to diffuse the situation. I want to follow your lawful command. Give me your card. I'm going to follow up with you. Would that be okay? I'm telling you, every law enforcement in the country, every law enforcement officer, male or female, is going to hand you their card and say yes. And you go, officer, thank you, Farmer Jones. I'm sorry, this happened. Again, this is a public fishery, but I am going to follow this lawful order, and you leave. Okay, so then now I'm Beau. I'm back at the house. I'm really ticked.
Yeah.
Because, dude, I was smacking those largemouth bass, right? I had caught 3 before the guy got out.
That'll be the way that it always happens.
Right, absolutely. Right, be the best fishing day of the year. So what do? You go home. And you don't have to necessarily call that particular deputy, although it's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
My recommendation to you as an angler is to call the public information officer. Call the person with the sheriff's department that deals with the public.
Yeah.
Whose job it is to deal with the public. And say, Sergeant, Lieutenant, Captain, whoever it is. Okay. My name's Beau Beasley. I'm an angler. I was fly fishing in the Johnson River today, and they made me leave, and this is a public fishery, and I just want to know why I was denied the opportunity to fish in a public fishery. Can you please respond to me and explain to me why? Here's the Texas code. Here's the game warden's phone number. Can you please explain to me why your deputy forced me to leave a public fishery? P.S. Here's my fishing license.
Yeah.
Don't be a jerk. Don't be nasty.
Present the facts.
And and if you call this public information officer at 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock the same day you don't get a call back, give the guy or the gal a break, right?
Yeah.
Give them, I would say it's not unreasonable to give a public information officer 72 hours to get back in touch with you. Okay, now, you call the public information officer, and he or she doesn't respond. What do you do then? You go online, you find their email address.
Yeah.
And you send them a very nice email. And people, dude, screw that. Okay.
But
then you really don't want to fish there. Then.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So you're very professional, and you say, Joe, this is where I'm at. This is where I was fishing. The state of Texas, here's the code.
Yeah.
The state of Texas says this is public property. Parks and Wildlife Department, go ahead and call them. Here's the game warden that I spoke to who told me it was public property. It fits the definition of navigable. It's more than 30 feet wide. Can you please explain to me why your deputy forced me to leave?
Yeah.
No response. Then what do? Then you write an email to the sheriff.
Yeah.
Not the public information officer.
Who's an elected officer. Who's going
to write an email to the
sheriff.
sheriff, and when you write the email to the sheriff, and I don't mean like 2 days later.
Yeah.
These guys are dealing with all kinds of stuff, right? So you give them 72, or you give them a week to get back to you. If that first of all, every public information officer I know, first of all, somebody's going to have to revive them to get them up off the floor because they're going to be shocked that somebody took the time to write them a polite email to say, here's the problem, right? Let's say worst case scenario. The public information officer doesn't respond. Then you write an email to the sheriff, and you tell them, here's the issue, and you write it to the sheriff. Then you copy the public information officer who didn't have enough time to talk to you.
Sure.
And then you copy your board of supervisors member.
Yeah.
Or whoever. Don't hassle with your congressman yet, right? Don't go to the 8th degree. Find whatever local official for that county or your jurisdiction and say, I need some help. Trust me, I'm telling you now, when that sheriff gets that email and finds out that a citizen obeyed the law, was respectful, tried to do the right thing.
Followed the proper procedures.
Followed the command of the lawful command. Because here's the deal. You can be 100% right, but as soon as that deputy says you need to leave, if you don't, then you're breaking a different law.
Yeah.
So you could be 100% in the right. As soon as that deputy says, sir, ma'am,
go.
we need to kind of diffuse things. You need to go home.
Yeah.
This guy's already at home. This rancher's already at home. Because here's what you don't understand as an angler. That rancher has dealt with 30 other guys, and they were jerks.
And
they left the fence open. Their cows got out. They left trash. They come outside. They're peeing on the side of the river. They're using language that they're afraid for their grandchildren to be around. And you're a good guy, but he doesn't know that. No. All that rancher knows is there's another knucklehead in my river.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is very gently and professionally educate them because they don't know. Yeah. Now, we are presupposing the rancher's wrong. It could be that you're wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And I would say to you, I don't care how good the fishing is.
Yeah.
If you don't have permission to be there, you need to saturate that place with your absence.
Yeah.
It's very simple.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I get it all the time. I have written about this so much. Now I'm starting to get emails, and inquiries for hunters. I'm having duck hunters contact me. I had an interesting case the other day in New York where a duck hunter was out fishing near an island, on an island near Westchester, New York, near Long Island, and he's in he's duck hunting. And a police officer comes up on the boat and says, you can't hunt here. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I've been hunting here 10 years. Can't hunt here. Well, why not?
Yeah.
Well, and the officer said, let me rephrase. You can hunt, but you can't discharge a firearm. Well, why not?
Yeah.
Because the city municipality has a code that says you cannot discharge a firearm within the city limits. You can't just go out in your backyard and fire off a couple rounds. And the hunter goes, wait a minute, man. And then he contacted, wait a minute, man. I'm out here on this island. Dude, you can't even see the city from where I'm at.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this island, that's part of the city limits.
Okay.
And the charter for the city says you can't discharge a firearm within 900 feet of the town line. So if you're duck hunting, you need to be 900 feet off this island.
Yeah.
So you can hunt, you just can't discharge a firearm.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a case where the hunter didn't know,
and
in some cases, it's just they've never enforced the law.
Yeah.
Right. Let me give you another example. I had a case about 6 months ago, and I have a lot of friends in the fly fishing community. So when they see an access issue, oftentimes they'll just write my name, which is they'll see something on Facebook and they'll just write my name, right? And then you go and check it out. So there was this young man. And he was in a kayak, and he was fly fishing, and a deputy came over and said, you got to go. And he goes, well, no, this is public property. And the deputy goes, okay. And about 10 minutes later, or half an hour later, a different deputy came out that really knew the law and said, no, you got to go. And the guy's like, well, I've been fishing here 15 years. I understand that. But what the angler didn't know was the property had changed hands.
Okay.
And the family who did own it sold it to somebody else.
Yeah.
And that person was not allowing public access. Now, I listened to, and there was a video recording, right? The guy had a camcorder, and he was videoing his interchange with the deputy. And the language that I saw, the sheer foul, unprofessional language directed towards the police officer in this, forum was shameful.
Yeah.
Right. Well, he's not out doing drugs. He's out fishing. Here's the deal.
It doesn't matter.
If he's trespassing, it doesn't matter if he's a Boy Scout.
Yeah.
He's trespassing. And it's not like that police officer was sitting in his car going, you know what? I want to go screw with a fisherman today.
That's what I'm going to do.
I got nothing better to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to go find this 19-year-old kayak guy, and I'm going to wear him out. And he didn't write him a ticket. He just said, look,
dude, you got to go.
You got to go. So, but it was a bad situation because the first deputy wasn't exactly sure what to do.
Exactly.
30 minutes later, a different deputy comes who does know,
Because somebody's blowing up a phone line somewhere.
Correct, because the landowner's going, look, there's somebody.
Got to go.
Got to go. So, all right, so here are the rules. Rule number 1, don't assume that the laws that you operate under in your state apply in another state, because they don't.
Yeah.
That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, do your homework before you go there. Call the local game warden. If you're a fly angler, you are an idiot if you don't call the local fly shop.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm from Dallas Fort Worth. I'm going to fish in Broken Bow, or I'm going to fish on the Wind River, or I'm going to fish on the Rapidan in Virginia. Can you tell me something about? Man. You're going to need this, this, and this.
Yeah.
These are the flies you're going to need. This is, by the way, if you need a guide, whatever.
This,
and they're going to tell you. Talk to the local fly shop.
Yep.
They're a great resource. If they don't know about the particular piece of water you're going to, call the game department of that area. Let me tell you, the game department in Texas, those guys are dialed in.
Top notch.
Right? Yeah. The guys and gals, I've dealt with Kara Quam, who does the angler education. She's on it, right? And I've dealt with I think Tom Heginger. I might be mispronouncing his name. He is the Tom is the lead conservation compliance officer. I'm sure I'm screwing that up.
Yeah.
But he was. Those guys are really dialed in. They're all about serving the public. Just call them and ask them.
Yeah.
Right. Just call them and ask them,
well,
and they're going.
They want as many people fishing as possible.
Correct.
Because that is dollars into their coffers.
Correct. Right.
So,
because here's a newsflash: people that get frustrated and quit fishing.
Yeah.
People that don't fish, guess what? They don't need
fishing license.
They don't need a fishing license.
Yeah. So.
And if they're not hunting, they don't need a hunting license.
Exactly.
And I don't know about the great state of Texas, but in Virginia, where I'm from, every dime the game department comes from hunting and fishing.
Exactly
our state legislature in the great state of Virginia does not give one dime to the game department.
Yeah.
Nothing. So if you don't buy a hunting license or a fishing license or a boating permit, the game department doesn't get anything. So trust me, the game department has a vested interest in you hunting and fishing. One of the organizations that I work with that is totally committed to not to hunters, but to anglers, and they've got a big push for female anglers right now and families, is takemefishing.org.
Okay.
There's a great organization. You just Google takemefishing.org. They're out of Alexandria, Virginia, is where their headquarters is. And a part of your fishing license goes toward educating anglers and getting public access.
Okay.
Paying for boat ramps, paying for angler education, and, probably, I would say one of the biggest. There's two big challenges right now in the fishing and hunting community, and I can't speak much to hunting. I mean, I have done deer hunting and rabbit hunting and squirrel hunting. I'm not a big game guy, and I don't hunt like nearly as much as I fish. Here's two big problems that we have in this country, the way I see it.
Sure.
Number one, fewer and fewer people are hunting and fishing.
Yep.
And they're living vicariously off of YouTube and Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
And they're not going outside in the outdoors.
Yep.
That's number one. This is just my opinion. Another big problem is if I have a position about public lands or fishing in a particular area, and it's on both sides, so I'm not castigating one side or the other. The preponderance, which by the way is a big word for a fireman, the proclivity to demonize the other side is off the chart.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, Abe? You disagree with me. That makes you Hitler.
Yeah.
No, well, hold on. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I just have a different opinion of you. How does that make me equal to
I'm not trying
Hitler?
to oppress anybody.
Correct, right? So one of the things I live in the greatest country in the world, right?
Yeah.
I live in America. If you live in America, you have won the lottery.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. This is the greatest country in the world, right? And the sky's the limit. But whatever opportunities, like off the top of my head, I can so we're in Texas. Ted Cruz is a senator here.
Yep.
All right, let's say you can't stand Ted Cruz and you hate Republicans. Let's just say that. When his father got here from Cuba, his father was a dishwasher. So in one generation, we go from dishwasher to United States senator.
Yeah.
That can't happen anywhere else in the world. Nowhere in the world can you do that but America.
Yeah.
So this, as far as I'm concerned, it's the greatest country in the world.
Agreed.
And I think we as sportsmen and Americans need to have a little humility and need to listen to what the other guy or gal is saying. It doesn't mean that I agree with them.
No doubt.
But I'm like a First Amendment absolutist. I think everybody should have their say.
Yeah.
Even if I don't like what you're saying, I believe you have the right to say it. In my opinion, and we're kind of getting off topic, but in my opinion, the cure for terrible speech is more speech.
Absolutely.
Right? Not that I well, I don't like what you're saying, so I'm going to suppress it. No.
Exactly.
If the guy's a jackass or the woman, just let them have their say. That's what America is about. Then I get to have my say.
Yeah.
And then rational people get to make a decision. And you're 100% right. You alluded to this earlier. There's a struggle right now about public lands and how they're going to be managed. And what we need to understand is everybody gets to have a say.
Yep.
What we can't do is we cannot allow any private interest, whether it be a private landowner or corporation, deny access to public property.
Yeah.
Can't happen.
No.
If it does happen, then it's kind of truth in lending here. I'm a card-carrying member of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and I'm just going to say that, right?
Yep.
I'm also a member of the Federation of Fly Fishers. I'm also a member of Trout Unlimited. I'm also a member of Bonefish Tarpon Trust. I believe in all these organizations, right? But we need not, and again, this is one of the things that I really appreciate about Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, we need not to jump to the conclusion that the other guy is evil or the other gal is evil.
No doubt.
What we need to be able to do is to marshal our facts, get our facts together, and then what makes America great is then you get to get into the ring. Advocate for a change, right?
Exactly.
So that's why when I write about river bottom ownership, or I'm writing about a duck hunter, or I'm writing about maybe a hunter trying to hunt on BLM land that's surrounded by public property or whatever it is, or private property, I don't take a side. I will fight just as hard for the private landowner as I will for the individual angler or for the deer hunter.
Exactly.
Because once we find out what the truth is, then we can do something about it.
Exactly. That's the
right.
thing, right?
And as an outdoor writer, I'm going to be very honest with you. My biggest, every writer, I don't care who they are. Maybe, I'm just a little piddly outdoor writer, right? But it doesn't matter whether you're a piddly outdoor writer like me, or you've written a couple of guidebooks like me, or you're a Pulitzer Prize-winning writer. It comes down to one word, and it only comes down to one word. One word is all that matters for outdoor writers, and that word is credibility.
Yep.
If you don't have credibility, you're toast.
Yeah.
And I've seen outdoor writers burn their credibility before. They've gone off on a tangent, and it's like, okay, you can have an opinion, but when you write something, you need to say, this is my opinion, and not try to present it as some kind of fact.
Yeah.
Right? It's your opinion. And I get this all the time. I will be given a talk at a club somewhere, and I will explain to them as best I can the access laws in their state. Because oftentimes they don't know. And they'll go, well, dude, in my opinion, that's and they'll just go off the deep end. And I have a pat answer for all of those guys. And my pat answer is this. There are only two people on the entire planet that I care about their opinions.
Yeah.
Two. The first person I care about opinion is if we're talking about whether it's the great state of Texas or Oklahoma or Arizona or Colorado or the great state of Virginia, where I'm from. I care about the opinion of the judge who is adjudicating the case that I'm reading about, or one that's related, right?
Yeah.
So I read briefs from time to time.
Sure.
So I deeply care about the judge's opinion because that ends up being the interpretation of the law. So I care about the judge's opinion. The only other person's opinion I care about is my wife's.
Yeah.
Right?
Everybody's
so
gonna
it's
have
the
that,
judge and my wife. I don't care what you... Well, I feel like I don't care.
Doesn't matter.
Right. Well, but in Wisconsin, and I hear this all the time. Well, in Oklahoma, guess what, Cupcake?
Doesn't matter.
We're in the great state of Texas. It doesn't matter what Oklahoma says. We're in Texas. But I got news for you. Once you cross a river, And you go into Oklahoma, good luck quoting to an Oklahoma judge what the law is in Texas.
Yeah, they don't care.
Because
doesn't matter
we're not in Texas. Right. So
and that's why we're the United States
correct.
of America.
Correct. And it comes down to it comes down to one word, and it's called federalism. Mm-hmm. And when I say federalism to most people, they automatically think it means the federal government. Exactly the opposite. Federalism means the individual rights of the independent states. Yeah. So Texas, because in our Constitution, it's a negative list. The government is responsible for this, this, and this. If it's not listed in the Constitution what the federal government's responsible for, everything else goes to the states.
Yeah.
That's why the states and the federal government are constantly arguing about who has jurisdiction.
Who does this and who does that.
Exactly. Yeah. Like here's something that's really cool. In the state of Texas, you can get out of the water and walk on the riverbank to a certain distance. My understanding, and it's about 6 inches, right? A lot of law is a lot like medicine. You'll hear an attorney's practicing law. Why? Yeah. Well, because in some cases the law means this.
Yeah.
In some cases the law means that, right? Yeah. It all depends on what law applies. So where you can get out of a river and walk up the bank, it's about 6 inches, 8 inches in Texas, is because of a law, because of a legal case between Oklahoma and Texas on who owned the river that separated the states.
Yeah.
And so they both decided, okay, where is kind of like the low point?
Yeah.
And that was where they decided the boundaries were for the state. So you can go about, and this is kind of true for most states. There's about a 6-inch variance from the high water mark. You can normally look.
Yeah.
You can stand and you can see a line of demarcation where the line normally kind of is, right? So where the vegetation stops growing, that's the high point, right? Now it might in Virginia. In July, the water level goes down. Dude, that vegetation might grow right down to the water line. But in the fall, you'll see 2 foot difference.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So, rule number 1, don't assume where you're going has the same law as you do.
Yeah.
Number 2, if you get approached by a rule number 2 is do your homework before you go where you're going to go. Talk to the local fly shop. Talk to the local game department. Talk to the local conservation officer. Rule number 3, if you get approached by a landowner, be polite, be professional, and don't be a jerk, right?
Exactly.
But know what you're doing. And if you come in contact with a law enforcement officer, follow their lawful commands, and then follow up later on. I have never had a case, and before we sign off, I'll give you a classic example. I had a guide call me, a very well-known guy that you would know if I mentioned their name, who called me and said, Beau, I need some, and I recognized their number on my cell phone. I'm like, I don't get a call from this guy very often.
Yeah.
And I answered the phone, hey, Beau, he told me his name. I am being told by the United States Coast Guard that I have to have a federal captain's license to guide people on the James River.
Yeah.
And I don't have one, and he's telling me I can't guide anymore until I get one, and the next class is like 6 weeks from now.
Yeah.
So imagine what it would be like if somebody said, hey, Abe, you can't work for the next 6 weeks, and if I catch you working in the next 6 weeks, I'm going to give you a ticket.
And it's going to be a costly one.
Right. So the guy goes, dude, I don't know what to do. I said, okay, where were you exactly, right? It's not horseshoes. Tell me pretty much precisely where you were and give me all the facts. And they did. I got off the phone, I wrote all of it down, and I called the public information officer for the Coast Guard in Norfolk. And I said, hey, my name's Beau Beasley. I'm an outdoor writer, and I'm writing an article about a guide in Virginia who's getting ready to get a ticket from the Coast Guard because your agent said that he had to have a 6-pack license. But I'm looking at this part of the river on the Army Corps of Engineers, and it's not a navigable river, so I don't think you have jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So here's what I'd like to do. Look, let me tell you something about the Coast Guard. They are the baddest dudes. The worse it is, the more likely the Coast Guard is going to go out.
Yeah.
Right? They are the firemen and cops of the ocean.
Yeah.
These guys, they're like they're a whole separate level.
Yeah.
You look up badass,
Yeah.
it's the Coast Guard
Yeah.
right there, because they are
Yeah.
coming to get you,
Yeah.
right? If your hope is, please God, let the Coast Guard, if you're out on the boat, right, please God, let the Coast Guard find me, right? These guys are going to do everything it is to come get you. And I said, so here's the situation. Here's where the guide was. It's not a navigable river. Doesn't fall underneath federal jurisdiction. Can you tell me, please, exactly what code he's going to be charged under?
Yeah.
Because I want to write about it.
Yeah.
72 hours later, I get a call from the public information officers. Yeah, I think maybe our agent was not exactly right. Okay, because you know what? Not everybody knows everything. And it could very well be that this special agent got told bad information, right? So when we were done, the guide was good. I was good. The Coast Guard knew.
Yep.
I talked to the game department, and they go, nope, according to our records, it's, you know, he doesn't need it. So it's not a matter of, right. So it could have started out with, let me tell you how it could have started out with. I write a national article that makes the Coast Guard look terrible.
Yeah.
Instead, the Coast Guard could not have been any more professional.
Yeah.
They were great to deal with.
Yeah.
The Coast Guard was phenomenal to deal with. So everybody got educated and everybody was happy.
It was a
and
win-win.
nobody got it. It was a win-win-win.
Yeah.
And that's what we want. We want as
Exactly.
many people hunting and fishing as possible.
And that's the thing, right? Keep the people in the water, keep the people on the land, and
Correct.
and enjoying what is theirs and what is legally theirs, right? Not what they think is or what they were told it was. It is what is legally yours to be on and enjoy and recreate
if they are, and believe me, I've been involved in cases where the public was kept off public property, and I write about that too.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. It's not
it
that
does.
it doesn't
happen very often, but it does happen. And when it happens, we need to call them on it.
Absolutely.
But we need to do it the right way.
100%. And we have to be fair to everyone. And a lot of people think, well, you can't be fair to everyone. You can, and that's why we have the rule of law.
Sure, you can. That's exactly right. Because if you don't have the
rule
rule of law,
as close to as fair as we're going to be able to get.
If you don't have the rule of law, you got mob rule.
Exactly.
That's why we have the rule of law.
Yeah.
So the law enforcement officer comes and does his job instead of me seeking my personal
vendetta. Yeah.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct. So, listen, I just want to thank you for having the opportunity to come here and talk to Stormwater Creek. I enjoyed being here at Tailwaters. It was a great event. And I hope to see you at the Texas Fly Fishing and Brew Festival, March 23rd and 24th in Plano, Texas.
I can't wait. We're gonna, like I said, we're gonna have you on again a little later, a little closer to into 2019 when we've got all of the lineup. I can't wait to hear the.
Absolutely, we got some really cool stuff coming.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Beau.
Thank you, Sean.
Hey, no doubt.
I mean, Abe. I'm sorry. I got
You're
Sean.
Looking at Sean.
I got Sean Polk, General Manager of Tailwaters. I got him on the brain.
Well, Sean and I look alike. I'm
glad. Well, you both got beards.
See, I'm just glad that my beard is finally starting to look like Sean's.
That's right.
I mean, he's got an epic beard. That's for sure.
Right.
So.
Well, and Christian's right behind him. Right. They're on it.
They're on it. Well, thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. Look forward to being on your podcast
absolutely.
again.
Thanks, guys, for listening. Make sure you go out and like and subscribe to the podcast. Check out the Texas Fly Fishing Festival. If you're listening to this and you're in Virginia, go out to the Virginia.
Right. So in Virginia, it's www.vaflyfishingfestival.org. Okay. And in Texas, it's www.texasflyfishingfestival.org. And if you want to learn a little more about some of my guidebooks or river bottom ownership, it's www.Beau Beasley, BEASLEY, that's my name, www.beaubeasley.com.
Well, thank you very much, Beau.
Thank you.
Go out, check him out. And,
thanks. I really enjoyed it.
for being on the podcast. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks.